Thank you very much for Nadezda Gavrilovic and also for the others being here at this very important event for presenting two books, one from 2020 and one from recently published. Both are united not only geographically but also thematically, focusing on Roman religion. So that's the common topic of these two books. This is why we decided that it would be interesting if we present these two books together, but not only because of this pragmatic or methodological reason, but also because we know each other since many, many years. And
yes,
Nadezda,
to great delight, at least mine.
It's also my pleasure to see you again after 4 years.
Thank you so much for the invitation, but I'll thank you later when you.
So I'm also happy that you visited Szeged and finally we can discuss about our books because the last 4 years we just met online. So our online discussions were also very useful, but it's
and constructive.
Living experience is also is always more important. So I will present this. The structure of our lecture is very simple. We will discuss each of our book. It's a communal discussion, and I will present your book, and after that
I will present your book with great pleasure. No, really.
And after that we will have a common discussion together, and of course also the public can ask any questions, or we can have an open debate, roundtable on Roman religion, on methodology, on the materiality of archaeology. So I will begin then with your book. This is the book of Nadezda, as you can see here. So this book entitled Ex Asia et Syria, Oriental Religions in the Roman Central Balkans. So and with this beautiful statue, which probably Nadezda will present some details about that piece too. It was published by the Archaeopress Roman Archaeological Series in Oxford. It's a well-known archaeological publisher in Oxford, used mostly by archaeologists, but since many years or decades now, it became a well-known publisher house for our own small family of Romanists and Roman religious studies also. The book is the first English summary of this topic of so-called Oriental religions in the Central Balkans, and I will try to explain why the author chose this title and this topic. So Nadezda Gavrilovic, Vitas, and also as a well-known archaeologist and researcher at the Institute of Archaeology from Belgrade, she has many archaeological excavations in Mediana and many sites actually in Roman Serbia, in Roman period, late Roman, antiquity. Also late antiquity. She organized numerous conferences in Serbia and will organize many other more important conferences. I just recently heard that she will be very busy in the following years with international congresses and conferences focusing on Roman art, Roman religion, and Roman archaeology. So she's a very dynamic member of this small community of Roman archaeologists, and she's a well-known member of this academic field known as focusing on Roman religion in Europe. I would say your name is there on the map from Central Eastern Europe. So I think it's a big thing now that both of us are from east of Vienna, as we say. Both of us from this region, which was for a long time considered as a marginal footnote in the Western literature.
And black hole.
And a black hole for the Western
That's
scholars.
That's the term that colleagues use.
Yes. No. So both of our material is brand new for the Western scholarship. This is why actually both probably we decided to publish in English and in Western publishers, because our colleagues, of course, some of them, not all of them, some of them know about this material, but this book is especially for the Western scholarship because they really don't know much about our material. And when we talk about Roman Empire and Roman studies, religion of antiquity, It's a global scholarship. So we are not writing only about for our own small community from Serbia or from Hungary, but Roman religion. We have scholars from the US, we have scholars from Spain, we have scholars from
Israel.
We have scholars from Tunisia. So it's really a global scholarship now, and unfortunately, most of them have few knowledge on our region. So also the book of Nadia. I hope you're not angry because I'm using his friendly name. So the book of Nadia is a smaller topic, focusing on particular religions or cults. We will discuss this terminology. So particular religions from Syria and Asia Minor, which was part of the Roman Empire in the 2nd, 3rd century AD. And as she called, in the Central Balkans. So there is also regionality of this book, focusing on Central Balkans, which she defines in one of your chapters. So you present actually that Central Balkan is somehow part of Serbia, but also a bit of Bosnia and north of or east of Dalmatia.
And Bulgaria.
And also Bulgaria. So it's a large area which goes beyond the Roman provincial limits. So it's not only Moesia Superior or Moesia Inferior or Dalmatia, but it's more like a geographical unit, which is very interesting approach, and I think it resonates with my globalization idea, because it breaks the provincial limits, and that's something new. And I was very happy when I read your title, because it's not like religion in Moesia Superior or religion in I don't know which province of Rome. We have these books since many years published on the
very thick frame.
Yes, a very provincial framework, which provincial limits are artificial limits, so established by the Roman administration, but not always corresponds with the religious realities, with cultural limits and with cultural borders. So I think your title and your geographic unit, which you choose to analyze, reflects this somehow new approach to break this geographical or traditional category of provincial religion. And then the book follows. There is a short chapter on cultural influences and Romanization. Here, of course, Romanization is a problematic notion. It's a very debated notion. You cite here some recent articles also, especially in the context of Roman religion. Romanization is now a debatable notion. I mean, we can discuss this, but as you mentioned here, that it is for a long time religion was considered as a consequence of Romanization. So it was just somehow an effect that Rome conquered a new territory, local people adopted official Roman religion, and that was considered Roman religion in the provinces. You show in this book that it's not true, or there is more than just Rome conquers the new territory. There is colonialism, there is new empire, and then new imperial territories, and the people living there just adopt a religious language.
We correspond there, because it's the same thing that you did in your book when you talk about the pre-Roman cultures, which are very important also for the territory of Central Balkans, because we had many tribes of Celtic, Illyrian, Thracian, Dacian origin, and they all were just, there was particular syncretism before Romans came, and this syncretism was inherited by Romans when they came and when they conquered the territory. And forgive me for interrupting now.
So yes, you're right that you in this the whole book is about that idea that Roman religion in such micro spaces like or smaller geographical areas like the Central Balkan is not only about Romanized religion, but it's also about this mobility of religious ideas. For example, the Oriental groups. And the whole book is about this idea of Oriental religions, as you mentioned in the title. So you are a Cumontian scholar following Franz Valéry Cumont.
Unfortunately, not. It was how to say a mischief of the reviewers. They insisted on religions.
Oh,
really.
So
That's the part that I didn't succeed to tell you, and I insisted on the cults.
Yes,
but I was prevailed by them because there were two of them, and I'm afraid that they are quite old and they are Cumontian scholars.
Yes.
No, they are definitely. One of them is definitely. I don't know for the other because I never succeed to find out the other's name. But so that was the compromise. I said, all right.
It's always a big debate, and that's my case also with instead of footnotes, all my precious data from footnotes ended in the endnotes, which nobody reads endnotes. So unfortunately, that was not our choice.
Not true. We read endnotes.
Hardcore scholars read endnotes, but most of the reviewers probably won't. But so in this case, Oriental cults, I also prefer cults because we are talking about the context of the Roman Empire and the religion in the Roman Empire. This is now...
there is a very serious argumentation for the term cults and not for religions because religions is something quite bigger, which is... how to say, it's a larger notion which doesn't exactly define what we think about when we talk about cults. Cult is something that you, as nowadays, which you really intimately believe in and which you carry with you either through a votive icon of some deity in which you believe in or statue, for example, as Artemis of Ephesus, of which you wrote so beautifully recently. So it's quite different notion than the religion.
And of course, it's also an issue of we are talking about polytheistic society. So religion as a notion appears especially after monotheism. So religions are more like monotheistic religions or exclusive religions. But in the Roman Empire, these are coexisting religious strategies, cults. From different divinities, they coexist, they exist together, and there are rarely we have actually conflict between these divinities. So what is Oriental cult in this book? Nadia presents here some very, very amazing examples of the famous Magna Mater Kybele cult. And all of these chapters are organized very, very logically, very in a beautiful structure. She presents first the origin of these gods, where they come from, how they were transported to Rome, so how these gods, so-called Oriental gods, became Roman.
Actually,
so it's
becoming
Roman as a process of Greg Wolf and others, like how these divinities are appropriated. They were born, actually, they were ancestral gods of the Asia Minor, mostly Anatolia, today Turkey, divinities like Magna Mater, which has probably a prehistoric origin, might be even from Çatalhöyük. We discussed with our students this problem of the Çatalhöyük figure, this divinity which resembles the same iconography as the Kybele, the goddess from Pessinus.
From the mountain.
But there is like 8,000 years distance.
Yes, but it is actually archaeologically confirmed because in several graves you have the statues not only of Kybele, which is actually Greek word for Magna Mater, which is of course Roman, but also of her priest. One of the figures, you know about it, I think that Lynn Roller wrote about it, and she is very definitive about the statue presenting the priest of Kybele. So definitely she is a prehistoric origin goddess.
So she was worshipped in Anatolia, Kybele Magna Mater, and became a Roman god by a very political transportation. She was chosen to be a Roman goddess because Rome was in big danger during the Hannibalic wars, the Punic Wars, when it was one of the most critical moments in Roman political and military history, when usually Rome, in such critical moments of their history, of course, choose a religious answer, a religious strategy to save their society, and that was how they the oracle of the Sibyls.
Cibele was actually Deus ex machina in a real sense of the word.
Yes, it just
for them.
Arrived in Rome with a political decision to save the city, which was endangered by Hannibal and the Punic invasion. So this is how Magna Mater actually is appropriated and become a Roman goddess. And
Attis came later.
Attis came later, but we have here these wonderful examples, epigraphic and archaeological monuments from Serbia, mostly from archaeological excavations, or as we can see, some of them are from unknown contexts, but very important materials. Then she presents also Attis, another divinity from Asia Minor, Sabasius, which has a very interesting history in the Balkans. Actually, he originates in Asia Minor, but he was adopted by the Thracians.
By the Thracians,
and also by local communities here. So it's a very interesting case study. And then Jupiter Dolihanus, another god from Anatolia, which is
of course, I think beside Magna Mater the best known deity.
Yes, deity, and very popular in Mysia Superior, with beautiful archaeological material you have there. And then Turmas Gadis, Melanus, Men, and finally Artemis from Ephesus. So there are this variety of divinities from Asia Minor, which shows a rich Oriental communities in Mysia Superior, which you can later talk how they arrived there. So why we have such a rich material from the Orient in Serbia, in Roman Serbia. So that's a very interesting question. Are there ancestral gods? Are they appropriated gods? And then Syria, the Syrian gods, which we have in Mysia Superior. We have Sol Invictus, the Syrian sun god. We have Dea Syria, which we know from the literature. We have the famous Lucian and his whole description of Dea Syria as a satirical and very interesting text on Roman religion, actually. And this mystical, problematic divinity, Theos Hypsistos, which was associated for a long time with monotheistic communities, with Jewish communities, with later with Anatolian angel cult. So that's a very...
but also with Sabasius.
And also
the
with
problem
Sabasius,
is because Theos Hypsistos is actually, in the opinion of some authors, the deity under which name you could presume any god that you believe in, for example, Sabasius. So from Pirot, from the south of Serbia, which is actually the border between Thracia and Mysia Superior, is an epigraphic monument dedicated to Theos Hypsistos, but unfortunately it is quite fragmented. So you cannot read all the inscription, and thus you cannot know whether it was really a monotheistic, as you say, god, or perhaps it was some other god like Sabasius. But what is very important is that this epigraphic monument was dedicated by the Tiasos of the Theos Hypsistos, with his priest on the front. So you have a whole organization which is nurturing the cult of Theos Hypsistos in the 3rd and perhaps 4th century in today's Serbia, in the south of Serbia, which is quite interesting because
and we have the same well-attested...
Then we should attest the sanctuary also.
Yes, and might be interesting connection with Sarmisegetusa, where we have this very rich material of Theos Hypsistos.
Yes.
So it might be some connections. And finally, Nadia books end with a discussion on quarries and workshops. So where those material are made actually, because it's all... Religious groups also need productions and people who are making these statues and reliefs. So it's also about circulating objects, ordering objects. So that's a very important chapter which we rarely discuss in religion. How objects are circulating, who are the agents who contribute to the circulation of material.
And about the iconography, because you have a typical standard iconography, and then again we have some objects which we cannot explain unless we use the term of local influence, because you have certain details which point out to local predictions, local beliefs, etc. So, for example, at least in the iconography of so-called artist tristis on the monuments, you have certain details which are very particular for the Western Mysia Superior or Western Central Balkans, to actually Roman Eastern Dalmatia, where there is a syncretism with Silvanus, for example, or not only with Silvanus but with Liber and some other gods, which is actually, in fact, we have, I think, one monument with bearded artists, which is very interesting.
Unusual,
yes, but he's holding a knife for wine, so he's actually definitely Silvanus or Liber, but mixed up with artists, because he has this position which is typical for artists. Yes, so
the book is also very beautifully illustrated with a large number of photographs and plans and a rich catalog of objects. It's also, I think, a great read for scholars of religion, but also art history, and so I recommend this book for students on Roman religion, on religious studies generally of this region. And congratulations for your work, and hope your book is well received. I don't know if how it is received, but you meet.
Well, actually, I don't think that many of my colleagues in Serbia read it.
This is how it happens usually, but hopefully the Western scholars.
Because not many of my colleagues are actually into sculpture, iconography, and again archaeological context. Because what, if I may speak in your name also, what Csaba and I are trying to do is to just focus on the thing that these experiences that existed in the Roman period are very similar to our experiences nowadays, because if you believe, then you have different reasons for believing in some deity or particular gods, for example, because one could then also believe in several gods, not only one god. But if you do believe, what are you trying to say with all these objects? What are you trying to, the idea behind is very important, because you can describe the object, you can describe the inscription that is interpreted, but then again, then you stand behind, in front, the wall. Then you ask yourself, all right, but what did he want with this votive relief? What did he want with with this sculpture? What is behind the whole idea? And that is what are we trying to do. At least myself as an archaeologist, I'm dealing all the time with material culture, but that is actually the reason why I see the problem, because we sometimes stray away and just interpret the material without the spiritual context, which is very important. So
it's also like what is good in this book. It goes beyond the descriptive classical archaeological methods.
Well, so I tried. I don't know.
Go beyond. So
I don't know if I succeeded, but at least it is one push ahead.
Yes.
So just to try to think in some other terms, as you also succeeded with your books, just to try to think beyond the frontiers, beyond the borders of our mind, actually, because they all carried something with them when they transferred. I mean, military, so administratives and everybody, they carried something with them, which was for example, from their country of origin. This is the fact with Asia Minor and Syrian inhabitants in the Central Balkans, because they were miners, they were stone cutters. They brought a part of their country with them, and they just tried to implement it in the new country in which they lived. So it is interesting to see this communication and with local inhabitants and the beginning of understanding. Because I'm trying to say this quite directly. There is a quite debate with artist tristis image, if you know from earlier literature. Actually, artist tristis, he is paredar, or how to say, husband of Magna Mater, and his image was in literature, not only Roman but also Greek, interpreted as a symbol of not only sadness for your lost one, for your deceased one, but also as the symbol of the hope in a renewal, in a new life of the deceased one. So actually, the images which were very popular in Western Serbia, in Western Roman Balkans, are so frequent that in almost every funerary monument you can see the image of Artis Tristis. And I really refuse to believe that it was put there, you know, just like an iconographic symbol, because people, some of the people at least, knew its symbolism, and they perhaps also, when you lose somebody you love, you hope to see him or her in your next life. So you really hope. That kind of hope is similar in the Roman period and today. Yes. So that is what I think we try to do when we explain the objects.
Going beyond objects and trying to interpret their object in the context, in the funeral context, religious context.
Or votive context, or whatever.
Also. And so I was happy to read many of these chapters, which resembles some of my ideas also, but also very well described classical archaeological methods of describing the reliefs, their typology, their archaeological context. Some of them, of course, some of them
and
are
the objects
unknown.
that just slip away, that cannot be put in some typology or anything else.
Yes.
Again, because of the personal beliefs and the personal, because you always have something which is not quite similar to something which is typologically put, how to say,
in the box.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was from 2020 and 21. Sorry, yes, 21. No, okay. And just because the COVID year was missing, so I was confused. So yes, 2021 indeed. And so it was the first synthesis of Oriental gods and Oriental cults in Mysia Superior, or what you call here as Central Balkans, because this notion actually unites at least three, or not, if not more, provinces.
Yes.
And their mobility of people from these provinces,
of course,
with
and
the Orient.
Similarities which were actually religious network did, because they just connected and they transferred their knowledge to the groups, which were quite small perhaps, but yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you also for the book
and for your presentation. Now, if I may, I have really a great pleasure because I'm one of the Czaba's fans for a long time. Csaba really made me fall in love with his first book, Sanctuaries in Roman Dacia. And of course I won't present Csaba to all of you, but I have to say a few words. First of all, thank you so much for this kind invitation, and I think that we can arrange something similar in Belgrade, hopefully. Yes, because I know of several and more colleagues who would be very interested, particularly in this new book of yours, which was a great delight to read and great delight to see all your ideas again put together, but not in the same way as in Roman sanctuaries. This sanctuaries in Roman Dacia, actually. The first book, of course, Csaba is a professor of some of you and a colleague of some of you. Yes. And I think that Csaba really resonated quite strongly with his PhD thesis on sanctuaries on Roman Dacia, and afterwards with his wonderful work in Erfurt with Jörg Rübke and other colleagues, the Erfurt School, if I may say so. So I think that Csaba is one of the most prominent, but I really do think that, honestly, scholars and scientists in Europe at the moment, because he also tries with his every paper, with his every book, also to go beyond the borders and try something new, at least to make us think differently, if nothing else, which is very, very important. So this is the new book, Roman Religion in the Danubian Provinces, Space, Secularization and Religious Communication during the Principate, which is very important to emphasize. Csaba is dealing with the first 3 centuries, not with the period of late antiquity, when we have if I may say so, a different structure of religions because of the syncretism, because of the solar cults, because at least of the early Christianity, which is also mixing there. at least in the objects where you can see the crosses behind the heads of deities and the halos around the heads of deities. We have it in Serbia, at least on several objects, because early Christianity is trying to conquer paganism and does that quite successfully. So Csaba's book is, of course, the publication of Oxbow books in Oxford, of course, which I think is a great privilege, which tells us that it is a very serious book and very important one. And you will forgive me now if I don't go beyond my time. That is the reason why I just wrote several things which I wanted to also emphasize, which I think that are important in Csaba's book. First of all, Csaba is doing something which nobody before him does, and that is he tries to make, and in my opinion very successfully, synthesis on 7 Danubian provinces. He is focusing on Raetia, Pannonia, Inferior Pannonia Superior, Maesia Inferior, Maesia Superior, Dacia, of course, and Thracia. Noricum, sorry, I forgot Noricum, yes, because because Pannonia is the focus for the material, Noricum, of course, also. And when I read Csaba's book, I was delighted because you read it very easily. The language is very concrete, the theoretical frame, if I may say so, and your mythological approach is very also clear, so there are no mistake in now wondering what the author wanted to say and everything else. You are very strictly introducing the subject which is the focus of your research, and that introduction starts with the term of Danubian provinces, which first appears in the modern times, if I may say so, in the 19th century, and also you introduce us to the studies about Roman religion in these provinces, which of course started with Franz Kimon, which we mentioned, and Visova, then of course continued by Vermasser and other scholars of his time, and recently, as I mentioned, with Jörg Rupke and Erfurt School in past 10 or 15 years. I must say that somebody who is not archaeologist, because he is linguistic, he is a philologist. Yeah, he really puts a different light to the whole story, which is quite interesting, at least for me, because I'm an archaeologist, so I just think differently, and now this is really refreshing. Now, after this introduction of Csaba, then he transfers to his division to sacralization, that is sacral spaces, into microspaces, mesospaces, and macrospaces, which was very interesting for me to read, because Csaba first focused on the provinces and their pre-Roman tradition, which is, as I mentioned, very important, because in pre-Roman tradition, in pre-Roman times, you don't have epigraphic, habit. You don't have no monuments, no inscription, even no iconography. So that's the similar situation in Central Balkans, because we do have material culture of, for example, Dacians or Celtic tribes like Skordisci, but we don't have any inscriptions from them. But what we do have are certain epithets, which Csaba also mentions here for certain provinces, like, for example, Mercurii Naisati or Herculi Naisati, where we see that these were certain local gods which were assimilated with these Roman gods like Mercurius and Hercules, but of course we don't know who were they,
yes.
yeah, and how did they look like, what were they, protectors of, etc., etc. So that really delighted me, because Csaba very argumentatively shows that of over, if I'm not mistaken, all votive inscriptions, 30% of them are actually, votive. Of all the inscriptions,
yes,
30% of votive, which is very peculiar, because this shows that religion was not at all ephemeric,
yes,
but very important part in every, society that was trying to be established in certain province, beyond this administrative frame, and etc. So what is also important is the fact that everyone who reads Csaba's book understands that he's dealing with a lot of ideas. And you are trying, if I may say so, really successfully to put them all together and to put all the elements together so that one can even start to understand how complicated this topic of Roman religion is actually in some province where there has been pre-Roman tradition. Then Romans came and brought their own tradition. Then, of course, different people of different origin, different social status, different profession just transferred or stayed or went away and left their own traces. So it's quite complicated. You even cannot perceive from which angle you are to start to see something. But what Csaba does is actually something that we can all understand even nowadays. First, sanctuaries, of course, sanctuaries which had also pre-Roman tradition, were formed by the major routes. Or on the top hills, on mountain. Csaba and I just mentioned now one of these sanctuaries in again south of Serbia, and these sanctuaries, some of them, as I said, had pre-Roman tradition. Some of them actually were formed in the Roman times. The other sanctuaries, of course, were formed when legions came, either in the fort or, how to say, beside the fort, yes. But also we have this moment of healing sanctuaries and thermal springs where different deities were venerated, even with pre-Roman tradition, some of them with Roman tradition. And now you have to just synthesize all of this and start to, how to say, put some case studies for particular cult in question. What Csaba did, and I think, yes, referring here, is that he also constituted something that is similar, at least in Central Balkans. The supreme deity is, of course, Jupiter, and to him the most of the votive inscriptions are dedicated, but also to other deities which were sought either because of the country to which one was coming, province, for example, or because of some other reason, and reasons are many, as we all know. But what is most interesting is that the example of Dacia is very similar to Central Balkans, because we have no literary sources from the antiquity that we can rely on to explain certain processes, certain, how to say, things that were happening during these first 3 centuries. So again, we have to rely on material culture, and material culture is saying different things again for different deity. For example, Pannonia Superior and Inferior, these are 2 provinces which were well excavated, particularly certain localities like Carnuntum, like Aquincum, etc. So we can there rely on good documentation and, how to say, good finds. What is the problem is when you don't have good documentation and when you don't have any documentation, but you have, of course, finds which you have to put in some context. And I think that Csaba beautifully puts in context certain how to say, objects which you were analyzing here and interpreting, like, for example, this statue of Artemis Ephesia that I mentioned just earlier, because it's quite interesting. I think that it is almost without any context. No. Yeah,
it's a looted site in Apulum, of course, but. Yeah, probably a domestic context. So it's come from a domus urbana, probably, or close to the forum, which was this representative part of the city. But unfortunately, it's not excavated site. So, but the statuette, indeed, it's a religious souvenir. So it's a small object which comes from the big sanctuary, the big pilgrimage sanctuary of Artemis Ephesia, one of the wonders of ancient times, and. Probably, we don't know, but we know that actually they produced small terracotta statuettes, small bronze statuettes next to the sanctuary. They find the workshops there. So it's one of those religious souvenirs circulating in the whole Roman Empire as a memory of probably of a religious pilgrimage. So that's a wonderful case of an individual,
it's
and
portable.
it's a portable.
You can take it with you. It's not such a problem to just like gems or amulets, which you are also referring in your book. And also, I was astonished to see how you can put some kind of, which you also did perfectly in your book, how you can put some kind of frame into certain parts of the cities where sanctuaries were, how to say, focused. For example, we have those also in Sirmium, in the, how to say, northern part of today's Serbia, because Sirmium was also imperial town, as you all know, and it was a place which is yielded with sanctuaries and everything. But that is why this material from our black holes is very important, because you have analogies with other cities and you have analogies with other centers. And as I always say, Romans were quite predictable. They didn't fantasize too much. they just put everything in order. So if they put something in order in Sirmium, they will put it in order the same or similar way in other centers. So that is the reason why the material is important, and why the architectural plans are very important, to just see or perhaps presume where certain sanctuary or sacrilege, how to say, sacralized places, yeah. Also, you started a very interesting topic with the sacralized spaces in the open, because those are the most difficult ones to archaeologically confirm. We have also in Dacia certain places like this, but you were good in your, how to say, putting together, connecting with thermal springs, and then presuming also not only religious pilgrimage, but also, how to say, the lifespan of these sanctuaries, which went on and on probably until the end of the antiquity, because they were quite famous and popular, particularly in, I think, also Mysia Inferior. You have certain influence from Thracia and Yatric gods, etc., as you beautifully wrote about Aesculapius, examples from Dacia also. Yes, but you also mentioned the connections between certain gods, which is very important in the way of appropriation, certain symbolic from the cults. For example, in your previous book, you wrote about this connection between Aesculapius and Olichenus, which is quite unique in Dacia. We don't have that in Central Balkans.
Only in Rome we have the Aventinus.
Yes. In Rome, of course, that's the place where it came from. Everything. But also here you write about the cult of Mithras and his influence on other cults, which is very, very important, because as I think, was it Gibbon who said it, if Christianity didn't win, then we would have now Mithraistic Mithraistic world.
He was not right in this sense, because Christianity, I mean, Mithraism was very exclusive because of not accepting women, etc. Yes. Also, but it's very rich material also in Mysia Superior, Inferior. Mithras is highly present. Also Pannonia is much more than in Noricum or Aetia, for example, where
in this
the material are not much.
But it can be explained by the military presence and by, of course, any other, how to say, elements or factors who transferred the cult beyond it. What I'm trying to say is that this was really privileged for me to read Csaba's book, because of one reason, which is very important to explain to people, not only to scientists but also to the wider public. It is not possible to write, in my opinion at least, a book about Roman religion in general in 7 provinces, synthesizing all these experiences and everything. So Csaba did what the only thing logical that he could do. He excluded certain case studies, and he wrote on these examples to just try to show how we can generalize even some things, and how we can understand the way that people thought and in what they believed in this period. If somebody tells you that you can, I tried also in my book to just, how to say, narrow down the territory, but I used my argument, which is of course cultural borders and borders of art, because these borders don't coincide with the administrative borders. And now you have one macro region which you beautifully defined as these 7 provinces, but still you cannot, as you beautifully also, I think, put to our knowledge in your whole book, you say that you didn't exhausted all the possibilities. There are, but you even that was not the aim of the book, exactly. And I like that, because it with the archaeology and science evolving, that can never be the aim of any book. We can just try to put things in the perspective in our time, and just to proceed as our, how to say, discoveries also proceed, and what we discover next and what we think next, or if we find some other new sanctuaries and everything else. But I think that this book is very important, not only because of the subject you are writing about, but because of the methodology. And I really think that, and I would really like my younger colleagues and students in Serbia to be able to apprehend that and to read it because of the methodology. The methodology you used is very important, to just focus on the significant parts when you are studying Roman religion, and not on the objects as in the mere description, because as we just previously said, to describe something is one thing, and to try to enter the head of the one who possessed this object is another thing. So in my opinion, I really not applaud only Csaba and congratulate him, but I would also like to say that I didn't mention so many things like hero scouts, Danubian riders, Thracian rider, all the very significant points that you are talking about, military element, and not only military, but also traders who were also transferring religion and religious ideas and everything else. But I really sincerely congratulate you on this book, and I sincerely also hope that I will get a new one as soon as you write it as the continuation of this book, and as again something new, not only in methodological approach but also in the context of this vast material. I just wanted to say that Csaba really gives an opportunity for all of us to see such rich material, really, and it took you much time to just synthesize that and to work on that. But if one gets to read your book, then one gets to understand how much work and thinking was behind it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I really congratulate you again, and thank you for this really wonderful opportunity for us to talk at least this little bit with all of you.
Thank you very much.